Good morning, Grinders. Welcome to the DFS pregame show here on RotoGrinders. I'm Jordan Cooper, aka blenderhd, your buddy Blenderhead. And this is the show where you should know this by now. We'll review yesterday's slate a little bit. We'll talk about today's big 14-game slate. Oh, it's big. It's big tonight. We'll talk a bit about that. And I answer your strategy questions. As usual, if you're here in the YouTube chat, I see you guys, Max Coach 1, Plan B smoothies. Plan B smoothies? I want Plan A smoothies. What do Plan B? It seems like I'm getting a secondary smoothie. I don't know. That's why I drink the apple juice. Click on that thumbs up button. Keep my apple juice cold. Keep the Plan B smoothies cold. Is it cold smoothies? I don't know. Plan B sounds secondary. Wouldn't you want to be Plan A smoothies? What's Plan B? I don't know. Explain that to me, dude. Suki Singh is here. Brian Seymour, Jupocalypse, GR Sauceda 12, Mike Blaze, Daniel Hutchings. All the smoothies drink. The Plan B smoothies. That's your second choice. That's what it sounds like. Who would name their company that? Plan B smoothies. In case it's the second thing that you chose to have. It doesn't sound too good. You always need a Plan B, according to the chat. Okay, maybe you do. And sometimes in GPPs, I need a Plan C, Plan D, Plan F, Plan G. Right? Sometimes you need that. Yesterday was kind of. Yesterday didn't work out. Yesterday, we had a 5-game slate, so it's small. We had that game in Wrigley, the Cubs-Mets game, which had a little bit of wind, 8 to 10 mile an hour blowing out. So that gave them a boost, but of course they need to hit the ball in the air, and that didn't happen all that much. So that game kind of dudded out. We had Buehler, Sanchez. I mean, the chalk combination of pitcher was going to be Buehler plus Sanchez, Buehler plus Pivetta, or a combination of Sanchez plus Pivetta. And then, of course, Christian Javier comes out and strikes out 9 guys in 4 innings. So you're pretty much going to need him. The Mariners were somehow way chalkier, way more owned than I thought they were going to be on DraftKings. Because I think what I tried to do yesterday on DraftKings is like I especially on smaller slates, I like attacking the chalk SP2s. So am I going to stack against Buehler? No, probably not. But Sanchez and Pivetta. So I played some Marlin stacks against Sanchez. I played some Mariners stacks against Pivetta, and neither of them worked. And Pivetta ended up giving up. I mean, he didn't strike out enough people. I mean, he gave up 2 runs, didn't get the decision, and then he came out after 86 pitches or something, and then Sanchez came out after like 70 pitches or something like that. 67 after pitching great for 6 innings or 5 innings. I don't know. So he only scored 17 points. Pivetta only scored 15 points. Buehler scored 27 even without the win. And then like the Astros were the best stack, but like there was no like must-have type of scores. Like Devers put up 24, Haniger put up 24. There were multiple ways for you to get to first place. Like you didn't need everyone. Like we see here the first place lineup. It's going to be a Houston stack because I mean Bregman, Correa. Like if you played 4 or 5 guys from the Astros, most likely you had double digits in all of them. But like look, Jesus Aguilar, 2 points, still in the winning lineup, right? Buehler, Javier. Verdugo, I mean, yeah, he had 2 steals, right? Like the Boston stack didn't come through. Devers, Verdugo, that's about it. Same for the Dodgers. The Dodgers didn't do much. I mean, no one really did that much. So take a look at a Hubro, came in second. Right, well, he just double digits. Straw, right? He had the Houston stack, which they all had double digits. Javier, Sanchez. And then there you go. Here's the Mets, right? Alonso had a home run. Haniger had 24. I mean, there's no like guy with like 37 points that you needed on a 5-game slate. Even the single bullet lineup over here. Yeah, this is like a messy lineup. Because a messy lineup could have won, right? You have Haniger, Verdugo, Devers, but then just kind of a mess. Could have gotten there. It's a little bit behind. Derek, this guy. Right, here's the Houston stack. 1, 2, 3, 4. Basically just a 4-man. No, 5-man. Right, there you go. 5-man Houston was the winner. Did you need it? No, but I mean, that was the easiest way. Most lineups are going to look like that. E. Hafner, same thing. Houston stack. Then Verdugo one off. 2 Miami guys that didn't matter. Pretty much Houston. The ownership on Houston was pretty low. I played some Houston stacks. Bregman, 11% for Bregman. I thought that was way too low. Correa, 7%, because, I mean, you had Lindor there, you had Bryant, you had Seager, you had Devers, you had a lot of people in those positions. It was very easy. You were now, I mean, Alvarez didn't do much. He had 5 points, but Tucker, Alvarez. I thought the Astros were under-owned yesterday. That's why I played them. There's another hub roll lineup. Another Houston stack. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Rizzo 0, Renfro 5, Pollock 16, with Bueller, Javier. Paying up twice at pitcher, which was the direct opposite of what I did. Right? I paid down twice, then paid up for expensive stacks. When I didn't pay up, I paid down for the Mariners. I just didn't realize the Mariners were going to be that owned. I mean, they were owned on DraftKings, same for FanDuel. Haniger was 19%. It's not like Haniger was that cheap. He was 4,100. Ty France, okay, second base position was weak yesterday. I get it. But Kyle Lewis was 16% because they were cheap. But I just thought that was leverage off of Pivetta. I mean, Pivetta's 35% owned. Why is Seattle also that owned? They were the second highest owned team on the slate, I think. I think the Mets maybe tied with the Cubs. The Mets were 1, the Cubs were kind of 2, and then Seattle. I didn't think the Seattle was going to be completely sneaky, but I think with Pivetta being 35% owned, they wouldn't be the third most owned stack on the entire slate. But I guess that's what people did. Say, I'm going to play Bueller and Sanchez and then stack against Pivetta, rather than play the Marlins against Sanchez, because it's not like the Marlins were owned. The Marlins were pretty low owned, right? Chisholm was only 10% owned at a weak middle infield position yesterday. Right? I didn't gauge it well enough. If I knew the Seattle was going to be that owned, I would have just not played him and just played Pivetta. I would have played more Marlins and lost. I mean, so that's the only difference. Because I would have played a lot of Pivetta and then just stack against Sanchez, and that didn't get anywhere. This is why you need to review stuff. I mean, I saw that last night. I checked ownership once the game's locked. I'm like, why is Seattle disowned? Like I had like a 4-man stack. I was playing mid stakes yesterday. I had like a 4-man Seattle. I had like a 4-4 lineup on DraftKings that I hand built, and I'm like, why is Haniger 20% owned? What's going on here? I'm like, okay, I misjudged this. Because even the RG ownership projections didn't have them that high. Didn't have them like low, but like 8 to 10%, and it was like double that. Because everyone else had the same idea. And we all didn't get there. Looking through the YouTube chat. My question for the day, am I sure this has been covered in the past? Is there an easy way to set Minnesota levels or minimum levels of a team you want lineup HQ to stack? I find I have to choose key players at a minimum level and hope for the best. No, you just use the stacks page. Just use the stacks page. Dude, look up here. Stacks. You could set whatever exposure on the stacks you want. These are maxes. Right, here you go. What type of stacks do you want to have? What percentage of them? And then here's all the teams. You don't have to use player groups. You don't have to use player exposures. Just use the stacks page. You want the minimum amount? We'll have them all equal 100. And there you go. You get the minimum. This isn't complicated. Exclude the ones that you don't want. I've never had a problem getting minimum. That to me, that's the opposite problem to have. Setting the max is hard. That's the hard, to get it to stop giving me stacks that I don't want as much of. So you have to make sure it all adds up to 100. If it adds up to 100, it's going to try to come close to that. So there you go. Like, oh, I want a minimum of a low projected Cleveland stack or something. Well, if everything's equal to 100, it's going to, you put Cleveland at 8. It's going to give you 8% because these are the maxes. So it's going to try to give you a ton of what's today? What's it going to give you a ton of? Like Philadelphia or something in cores or whatever. Maybe Boston, that Boston-Seattle game. It's going to just jam that in. But if you max them at like 6 or something, it's only going to give you max 6, and it's going to move on. So as long as you equal like 100, around 100, it's going to try to give you exactly what you want it to give you. So I don't think you don't have to worry about the player exposures minimum for a minimum. So no, you don't have to do that. That's why I didn't get the question. The problem usually is in the max, not the min. Getting the stacks is the easy part. You just max, you cap everything else. It's not that complicated. J10 asks, Blender, yesterday you mentioned percentage of prize payouts per contest and what determines not only which lineup you put in, but which contest you enter. Can I elaborate on which contest a beginner of GPP should enter? It depends what types of contests you want to play. Best thing to do is play anything on the cheap. $1 quarter arcade, stuff like that. But you have to cater to the field size. It's not the stakes dollar contest. Dollar contest with 100 entries is different than a dollar contest with 15,000 entries. One's not better or worse for a beginner. That doesn't matter. But a $1 contest, single entry $1, 584 entry single entry contest, you treat as a single entry $1, 584 entry contest versus a $1 20 max 13,000 entry contest. Skill level doesn't matter, but it's two totally different types of lineups. You're going to play large field stuff, play large field lineups. You're going to play small field stuff, play small field lineups, regardless. Doug Montgomery says a lot of touts on Seattle yesterday to go against Chalk Pavetta. Yeah, but it makes sense. I don't blame anyone. Just a little bit more than I thought, right? Because it makes sense. You see, it's a 5-game slate. Where else are you going to find relative value? That's the easiest place to do it, typically at a chalky SP2. And the 2 ones were Pavetta and Sanchez, and people apparently went against Pavetta more so than Sanchez. Sanchez has walk problems, but Miami people don't like playing the Marlins, right? I don't think people necessarily like playing the Mariners, but typically when you hear the Marlins, I don't mind. They'd look at that Marlins lineup and go, how am I playing these guys? And they're playing in San Francisco, which is perceived as a heavy pitcher's ballpark. They'd rather play Seattle in Fenway. I guess that makes sense. Michael Ligenfelter says, on a slate like last night where Seattle leverage was a lot more owned, what do you do with that info moving forward? How can we get a sense for these types of situations? Is there any way to predict that? No, not necessarily. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes people are looking for a contrarian route and everyone tends to go in a similar direction. We see that all the time. Like we'll see on tonight's slate. It's a 14-game slate, so I don't think there's going to be like super duper chalk. But I mean, we got that Coors game, and I think on DraftKings, like on FanDuel, the Phillies are not going to be as owned. Because FanDuel priced them up. The DK didn't. Like if I take a look at the bat stacks page, let's see, this is DK. Yeah, Philly comes up pretty high, point per dollar wise, but nowhere near as high. Like point per dollar wise, where are the Phillies? Like all the way down here, right? They don't even show up in the top 1,000 stacks on FanDuel. So on FanDuel, they're expensive. Like McCutchen is like 3,700 on FanDuel. Like they priced them up for cores, but we take a look here on this is DraftKings. Let's go. Where the Phillies? Right, they just forgot about him pretty much. McCutchen 3,900, Hoskins 4,600. Harper's 5,700, but he's normally up there. Bohm is 35. Brad Miller's 3K. Even Moniak is 2,300. I think the Phillies are going to get some ownership today. We have a bunch of ace pitchers today. But yeah, sometimes what ends up happening is that, let's say, for instance, the Phillies are like, oh, everyone's going to play the Phillies, and then they just find somewhere else to play, and the chalk team actually goes under owned because everyone's like, no, everyone's going to play them, so they don't, right? Sometimes you see that. Should I have known that more people were going to go to Seattle yesterday? I don't know. Like I said, I didn't think they were sneaky, but they were like twice as owned as I thought they would be. Sometimes that happens. If I would have known that, I would have just not played them, played more Pivetta, and played more like Houston, right? Or the Cubs. More people were on the Mets side, but still, the Cubs were owned also more than I thought. Baez 25%, Bryant 23%, Bodie was 16. Like Bodie was 16%. I thought the Mets side would be way more owned than the Cubs. Right, Rizzo was even lefty. Rizzo was 15% owned. So yeah, I guess so. It's a 5-game slate. There's not many ways to go. But yeah, I misjudged ownership. It wouldn't have mattered. Anything I would have done differently would have landed me in the same spot anyway. I was already not going to play a lot of Walker Buehler. I was not going to play Christian Javier. So what am I doing? Just playing more Red Sox then? So Red Sox weren't as owned on DraftKings because they were way expensive. But I could afford them. So great. So I play 5-man Red Sox stack and still lose. So it's not like it mattered. Let's see. Cheese's assessment of Pivetta could have moved percentage on. Not that GR saw say to 12. I know it's a complimentary to Cheese or to any analyst here at RotoGrinders to think that we move ownership, but there's a lot more people that play. Like Cheese's assessment of Pivetta could have moved ownership onto Seattle. I saw top winners went with Houston stacks, so DK to pivot from Seattle chalk. When was Seattle chalk? Seattle was never chalk. They turned out to be chalky. But they were never like proclaimed. Around the industry, the ownership on Seattle was lower. Not 1% owned, but not 20% owned. But no, there's nothing that Cheese could say in his musings for premium subscribers, which you could get if you click on the link in the description below. Get $10 off your first month. There are way more people that play DFS. That's like, oh, I read Cheese's article, and then that inflates Seattle's ownership by 10%. Like that doesn't happen. It's flattering to think that many people versus the amount of people that play in these DFS contests. But no, it doesn't. Maybe a percent or two. Maybe a percent or two. Other than that, like, no, it's not going to sway ownership that much. But yeah, but like Alex Santi said, Pivetta is about as polarizing as it gets, right? But I said that yesterday. I said Pivetta's high variance. So it's like I either want Pavetta or I want the team against him. One of the two. Now on FanDuel, I played a ton of Pavetta. There's one pitcher side, and Bueller was chalk, so that's fine. But on DraftKings, I'm like, if we're gonna get 40% Pavetta, I'm gonna play some Seattle, but I'm also gonna play some Pavetta. But I thought the same thing with Aaron Sanchez. I think Pavetta's a better pitcher than Sanchez, like from a strikeout stuff type of thing. Sanchez has problems with walks also. And the Marlins were much less owned. So I did both. It didn't matter. It didn't matter. Neither of them worked out, and I was planning on not paying up at pitching anyway. So what am I going to do? I played Daniel Castano in two of my lineups. He got like 7 points. He got something, right? Right? He got 5 points. Okay. 5 points. I mean, it was only 6,100. That's what I was trying to do. I was going to run 2 cheap pitchers, but the winning construction was 2 expensive pitchers. So I'm never going to win in that scenario. Lucas Yanetsko, can you discuss how using the bat optimal is going in cash? That's not going that well. It's been 3 weeks. It's been 10% of the season. Down like 20, 25%. So doesn't matter what it's doing now. I don't care. September 1st. That's all that matters to me. I barely look at it. The only reason I bring up my bankroll tracker is just to enter stuff in. It doesn't matter. Wow, it's down. Oh, it's down 18% on DraftKings. Great. This can turn positive in 3 slates. So what do I care? I have stocks that are down 18%. What does that matter? I'm holding on to them for 20 years. What does it matter if they're down 18%? People are way too short-term thinking. Way too short-term thinking. Like 3 weeks. Like, dude, 3 years is too short-term thinking. If you've played GPPs for 3 years and played every slate, you could be the best, literally the best player in the world. The best ever to play DFS and be down $1.5 million. Okay? So a 3-year time period, still short term. Arguably, a 10-year time period is too short term. Okay? So understand, like, I'm trying to exaggerate for a reason. Oh, I've lost a week straight. That's in comparison to nothing. That's how quick that is. It's quite possible that no human being that has played DFS since DFS was invented has a large enough sample size to have to quantify their edge positively within 1 standard deviation. No one. Not a single person. If you were to play every contest in every sport ever offered on every slate, ever offered since 2009, on every site, ever offered in every country, ever. So you played the max amount of entries. Like, you maxed out literally every contest, everywhere, forever, since DFS started, the first ever contest. And let's say your ROI is 12%. It's likely you could possibly still be a losing player. Okay? So this is what we mean by low. Like, that large of a sample size, which is a fraction of what a normal person would play in the scope of 3 to 5 years. That would be less than 1%. Every contest ever made, everywhere in every sport, on every slate, turbo, tiers, everything, literally everything. You could do that. Let's say you have a 3% ROI. Okay, something that's closer to 0. It's quite possible that your true ROI is negative 5%. Even playing every contest ever made, doesn't matter. You don't come anywhere close to that. Okay? So that's what we mean. That's what I'm talking about when it comes to sample size. Oh, I think I have a large enough sample size. No, you don't. I could be a losing player. I've been playing 5.5 years. I'm up almost $400,000. I have a 44% ROI in GPP. Is that sustainable? No. I could still be a loser. I could be an absolutely losing player. I could be, and just have gotten lucky a couple of times. It's quite possible. It's less likely than if you're down 44%, right? As the sample size gets larger, as the results get better, it's more and more likely, but not 100%. Okay, let's see. Going through the YouTube chat. How is it all just not luck then? It's math. One hand of poker is luck. 100,000 hands of poker is not luck. The thing is, you don't get 100,000 hands in DFS. There's no such thing. 100,000 slates. When can you play that many? But over 100,000 hands of poker, if you're not profitable after 100,000 hands of poker, like most likely you're bad, or you're not good enough to be profitable. But 100,000 DFS, you can't play. How many slates do you possibly play? Because you have to consider a slate to be a hand. In poker, you're playing. If you're playing online, you could be playing 60 to 80 hands an hour. Live, you could be playing 25 to 30 hands an hour. So you could play 100,000 hands of poker easily. No problem. You could play these. Sometimes play that with the matter of months. Right? Even Alex would say, I say 1,000,000 hands of poker. Right. Right. 100,000 may not still be enough. 1,000,000 hands of poker. How many slates can you possibly play in DFS? And let's say you play every day. There's a sport going on every day. Let's say you play multiple sports. 365 days a year. You play on multiple sites, so those count double, right? You're playing on FanDuel, you're playing on Draftkings. Maybe what? Maybe you could play 2,000, 3,000, right? If you play 3 different sites, three slates a day, 4 slates a day, maybe playing 10, 3,500 a year. Okay. So how do you get to that million? 3,000 a year, 10 years. That's still 30,000. That's still nothing. You have to make decisions as if, if we played this laid out 10,000 times, what would be the most profitable? But the amount of variance that is in any of the amount of variance that's in poker, the amount of variance that's in DFS, you should never be exactly sure if you're if you got lucky or you're profitable. That's one of the hardest things to do in DFS. You could simulate it. That's what a lot of people do. You simulate the slate out even after the fact, based on your projections. You say, did I make good lineups? Did I make bad lineups in comparison to the rest of the contest? You see a lot of bad lineups in contests. Michael Lingofenter asks, do you know if Slate IQ is using the bat X as project? No. Nothing on RotoGrinders uses the bat. Only the bat uses the bat. Slate IQ is using their Plate IQ projections. If you want the bat, you get the bat. There you go. So on today's slate, we don't have ownership, so whatever. Let's see. Let's take a look. Using the bat projections on DraftKings. I'm assuming the Phillies. I mean, we can take a look at the stack projection page. We have Seattle, Philadelphia, the Yankees, the Tigers against Minor, point per dollar wise. The Rockies against Velasquez, right? Obviously, the Coors game is going to be popular, but it is a 14-game slate. And obviously, Jacob deGrom is going to be popular. Let's take a look at these projections. Yeah, I mean, Jacob deGrom on DraftKings, I mean, he's like 12-5 on FanDuel, so I don't know what's going on FanDuel. But he's 10-9, and he's still the best point per dollar pitcher on this entire slate. Okay, so I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna run 49,000. I'm gonna run 150 lineups. I'm gonna use just a 5-man stack. That's it, the 5x. Come on, just to see what comes up. I already modified my player pool. Get out of here. I said what I wanted. I wanted 5-man stacks. So give it to me. There we go. To get a sense. This is just using the bat projections, but get a sense of what shows up at the top. Brett Booth asks, what is a good indication to know whether you were building good plus the EV lineups? Is your process being effective or you need to retool somewhat? If you're playing GPPs, a good way to determine that is by looking at your top X percent finish percentage. You should be placing more than your fair share of top 1%, top 0.5%, because your goal in GPP is to get the top spots. Coming in and cashing doesn't matter. So you're looking for finishing percentage. Because you could show up in the top 1% and just variance. The difference between you coming in 24th and coming in 3rd could be a triple, right? It could be barely anything. But you have to give yourself those opportunities. You need to put those shots on goal towards the top. Are you building lineups that are coming close to the top? Because the difference of 1st place and 7th place is dramatic. 50,000 versus 1,000. So $49,000 worth of difference could be 3 points, 4 points. Can you control 3 or 4 points? No. But you can control how often you're up in the mix type of thing. So viewing your GPP entries from how much more than your fair share. So like on I have Roto Tracker. If I go to my Roto Tracker, I could go here. Here's my total profit graph. Go to finish position. I could go to 1% buckets. And I could see, right? This is the line. Right? So this is the top 1%. I'm placing 1.8% of my entries in the top 1%. So I'm getting more than my fair share. 1.2% would be like paying the rake. 1.4% would be slight profit. So you want as much of this as possible. You want your graph to kind of look more like this. Right? Even if you go by 5% bucks, like that's not enough. A 5% finish, that could be like 200th place. 0.5% bucks. Right? You can see here, I'm a little bit more, slightly higher. Right? My top 0.5% is at 0.8%. So I'm slightly 60% higher. I'm way higher in the top 1% here. This is a better way to judge. Right? Top 1% finishes. How many lineups am I getting towards the top? Towards the top. Whether or not they finish 1st or 5th, the difference of that is a lot of money, but what are you controlling? You're not controlling anything. Right? Someone gets a single, right? The other day, Luis Arias throws the ball away. Cost me the difference of 2nd place and 1st place. What more can I do other than try to get a lineup close to there? Other than that, I can't control anything. So this is a better way. I know some people there are several people that I know that have played for 2 years and their finish percentage for the first top 1% is like 2.4%. And they've never finished 1st place. Right? Got 3rds and 5ths. They're sitting there going like, I'm kind of breaking even, kind of slightly profitable, but like their finishing percentage is so high, they're getting unlucky. Just keep on playing the way you're playing, and eventually they end up binking. 6 months later, they take down one GPP here and another GPP there, and now they're wildly profitable because they're placing more lineups. They're building those lineups that get up there. So to me, that's a good way to judge, rather than just the straight ROI. So if you're not getting enough of these, then you have to build better lineups. If you're getting a lot of these and you're not winning, then that could be unlucky. Keep on doing what you're doing, and it'll come at some point. Okay, so let's see if this is done. Okay, 150 lines. Yeah, 96% DeGrom. Yeah, Alex Wood, is he going to be the SP2 of choice? Well, it's against the Marlins, right? We got tons of Phillies. Philly stacks. Let's see, Philly stacks. Let's take a look at the stack summary. Right? Phillies, Seattle, Colorado, Yankees. Yeah, DraftKings, the Phillies are going to be the highest owned team. But it's a 14-game slate, so I don't know how high. Like, they'll be high owned, but will they be 20% owned on a 14-game slate? Like, the higher they're owned, the less you want to play them. There's 28 teams to choose from. It could be one of those things where people are like, oh, everyone's going to play the Phillies on a 14-game slate. Why am I going to bother doing that? And then they end up being like 8% owned. They'll still be the highest owned team, just like it'll be a little bit more spread out. It could be. FanDuel's a much different story. What's going on FanDuel? Let's run the same thing on FanDuel. I'm going to go down to 2 unique players. Go up to 150. Let's get these. Clear these. 33,000. Clear that. We got this. We got stacks. Let's do 4-4s. Just straight ass 4-4s. So what does this look like? On FanDuel. Because we're not going to get many Phillies. They're expensive. Expensive. Brett Booth, if you flash into first on a large GPP after an hour plus on the night, but don't finish there, that doesn't matter. In the middle of a slate? Right, because you played the first game. That doesn't mean anything. What happens in the middle of a slate doesn't matter. You close your eyes, go to sleep, and wake up the next morning. Oh, you could come in first in a large GPP every night if you want. Just literally stack the first 2 pitchers and the hitters on both teams. You're pretty much guaranteed to come and be in first place for at least the first 10 minutes of the slate. Yeah, of course, but that doesn't mean anything. Old man Peabody, do you choose batters based on their batted ball profile? Say a batter has a high ground ball rate versus the pitcher with a high ground ball rate. Do you shy away? I don't look at any of that. I don't look at any baseball stats. Everything that you're talking about is already reflected in the projections. So no. I do not choose players based on based on looking at baseball stats. But I choose all my players based on baseball stats. It's just that the projection model does that for me. Jacob Calloway says, not sure how to sim baseball with the correlation. It's a little bit more difficult, obviously. If Mookie does well in the sim, obviously Dodgers hitters should perform well too. Just using the projections and standard deviation doesn't account for the correlation. That's correct. All the sims that around the industry, and say for RG, uses individual player simulations. So just simulating, oh, the player has a certain range of outcomes. Let's run it once. Let's run it twice. But like Mookie Betts' simulation isn't correlated to Corey Seager's simulation. They're being simulated separately. Justin Turner's being simulated separately. But most likely, if Betts is doing well, that means that another guy on his team is doing well. But in the same trial, it's not related to one another. So no, there's no correlation involved with that. You could look at the medians of all of them combined, but truthfully, that's not the best simulation methodology. It's the easiest one to do, and it's still better than none. But no, you'd have to simulate the slate with the proper correlation coefficients involved, which means if this guy does well, then this guy also does. How much percentage more? If Betts and Corey Seager may be correlated 0.4, Mookie Betts and Will Smith may be correlated 0.32. Mookie Betts and Chris Taylor maybe 0.21. You have to add those in if you're going to simulate based on that. Now, it's much more difficult to do. Also, there's more room for error since those correlation coefficients may not be the most accurate. And once you start adding more things that have a margin of error and start multiplying everything that you do together, the thing that comes out could be wildly wrong or wildly right. The variance is going to be much, much wider. So that's why most projections around the industry do individual player simulations and not. We have the slate IQ. So slate IQ is a slate simulator using the plate IQ projections. So that's the closest you get to that. So obviously the stack projections are going to be correlated. Yeah, we're looking at now we're simulating lineups, not necessarily like baseball results. Let's see. Daniel Hutchins says, another way to get a better idea how you're doing is to create many more lineups than you need for each slate and then evaluate how you would have done on average if you could have played them all. I guess. Is that useful? Build a whole bunch of lineups that you don't play? If anything, just play the quarter arcade then. If you're able to. I mean, I can't. If you're not limited. Who wants to build lineups and not play them? Gavin Nokomovich, another win on FanDuel main slate last night. Well, congratulations. How do you attack a 14-game slate if you're only playing a handful of lineups? But play the best ones that you think are the best. If you're only playing 5 lineups, choose what you believe is the best. I can play this. You narrow it down to 8. You go, I can't play 8. I can only play 3. Well, then narrow it down to 3. And it can be subjective to you. Should I play this? If people are going to play that, how about I play 4-man this and make that assessment? However many choices you need to make those choices. If I were building single entry, one lineup tonight, I would analyze everything, see who the most under-owned team is, or the place that I can get the most leverage, or whatever, and then go, okay, I'm going to stack this team. Okay, done. And fit whoever fits around them. And that's it. But I think the key on DraftKings today, the key leverage points, the key chalk points is DeGrom and the Phillies, right, on DraftKings. So we could see, you could run it. Just run your projections. You'll see what happens. So if we look on DraftKings, we see DeGrom, Wood, a bunch of Phillies, a bunch of Mariners against Martin Perez, right? So this is what's most likely to be chalk. I don't know about Alex Wood, but if Alex Wood is chalk, maybe that means you stack the Marlins as leverage. But I don't know if any SP2 is going to be that owned on this slate. DeGrom will be. The Phillies will be on DraftKings. Now on FanDuel, okay, we're done on FanDuel. Still get a ton of DeGrom, right? Right? He's still going to be chalk at 12.5. We get a little bit more Glasnow or Darvish or something like that in there. But it takes a look. We see Seattle, Boston on FanDuel. Yeah, Seattle, Boston is all over the place. Houston. But yeah, Seattle and Boston are the chalk. Like Philly comes up 8%. Right? 8% here. Colorado, do they come up at all? On FanDuel? No. They're priced up. Doesn't mean they don't have a ceiling. The Phillies could still put up 12 runs. It's just that they're more expensive on FanDuel. So I think that's more of the choice on FanDuel of, do you play the Phillies or do you play DeGrom? Or do you play neither? But DraftKings is pretty clear. Probably if you're playing cash games, you're going to be playing Phillies. Phillies Mariners. Because I don't even think the Mariners are priced up enough. They didn't really move, right? Kyle Lewis is still 3,200, coming off the DL, IL, whatever you want to call it. Right? So even if before ownership projection, just come and run your projections. Run 150 lineups with some bare basic stack combination. And you can start seeing what the more likely chalky lineups are going to be based on the obviously projected starters and everything. You don't have to wait for the projected ownership. You go, okay, I could see what people are going to do, most likely. Daniel Hutchins asks a much more complicated question than most people in the chat are going to be able to answer. This is what sharper players talk about. Is it possible to simulate random, normally distributed variables with a bit of linear? Yes. The problem when it comes to simulation in baseball, especially, is that the baseball results. You're right. They're not normally right. They're really not normal distributions. Take a look at Rougned Odor. Can you get more binomial distributed than him? Odor doesn't never score 6 points, right? He's always projected for 6.5 or something at like 2,000. He's minimum priced 6.5 is his mean. Yeah, good luck him ever scoring 6.5. He scores 0 or 14 like all the time, right? Strikes out 4 times or hits a home run. It's one of those two, right? Same for Gallo. You see Gallo's mean projection is 10.1. It's like it's so like the 60% of that is fucking home runs. So yes, it's not a normal distribution. You're right. You're absolutely right. It's possible. It's just that it's complicated. Is it needed? I think that's the better question. Is it needed? I don't think it's needed. Yes, you'll get a little bit more accuracy, but I think even simulating individual player scoring, you're stacking anyway. So like the point is like factoring in the correlation to your simulations doesn't matter that much. It's not like you're not stacking. You are stacking as it is. So if I average, if I give a stat, like if I take a look at the bat page and I look at, the bat page for DK and I look at, ceiling point per dollar, right? If I look at, the average of all the batters combined in a 5-man stack or something like that, if I were to simulate with the correlation, wouldn't it be close anyway? Right? Not going to get dramatically different results, even if you're simulating individual players. It's not going to be as accurate. I get it. Yes, you're right. It's not going to be as accurate. Am I going to come to this about the same decision? On DraftKings, if I do individual player simulations, I'm going to get the Phillies to be the top point per dollar ceiling stack, right? One of them. Now, if I did it did it a more complicated way, well, like what? If the Phillies are going to come in at last place? No, they'll be number 1, too, right? So I don't mind sacrificing accuracy for ease. But yes, it would be more accurate. Rob B, odd question for you. Do the models take into consideration bullpens? The bat does, at least. I don't know about the plate IQ projections. Most do. Jacob Calloway says, so in theory, with enough data and machine learning, we could figure out which players have which types of distributions, yes, and individually sim them accordingly. Yeah, but even then, that's not enough because you're playing stacks. You still need to put the correlations between the players in your simulations. Because even though we take a guy like Joey Gallo, right? Joey Gallo has a different distribution than IKF, right? Kiner Falefa. He's a little bit more of a slap hitter, right? But still, the more that IKF gets on base, the higher the ceiling Gallo has because Gallo bats third and Kiner Falefa bats first. So when Kiner Falefa has a better game, Gallo obviously has a higher ceiling because he's getting on base for him to drive him in. So you have to factor that into your simulation. You can't just do individual distribution. You can't. I mean, you can. It's just not going to be as accurate as doing it with all combined. I love the way that we're talking about something that I've narrowed down the audience to 2 people in the chat. Everyone else is like, what the hell are you people talking about? This is the more important stuff, right? This is the once you could get all this stuff into numbers, then you don't have to worry about the sports anymore. It's all taken care of. You just build lineups. You're good. First round exit says, Blender, my friend is teaching his 9-year-old nephew the importance of defense versus position in NBA. Do I need to get new friends? Yes, that's easy. Definitely get smarter friends. Okay. Right. Jacob says in MLB we're playing stacks. You meant more broadly for sports where correlation doesn't exist. Yes, I agree with you. Yes. Seems like Jacob and Daniel and Jupocalypse will all have a conversation. Feel free to stay in chat later after the show, right? We're done here anyway, right? What else more can we talk about? Well, it's 14 games and 28 teams to choose from. Close your eyes, pick whatever you want, right? Just look at the projections. I'm playing on both sites today because then they're running a cheaper GPP on DraftKings, so it's like $8. So I could play 100 lineups into that. 100 lineups on DraftKings, 100 lineups on FanDuel. Let's see how far I can miss this tonight. I'll probably play 12 different stacks. So who knows? Gonna have to mix in Phillies. Is the sneaky thing on FanDuel to play the Phillies? How owned are they going to be even at those prices? Maybe they still will be. I'd love that to happen, right? For the Phillies to be 20% owned on FanDuel at those prices. I'm hoping that they'll be lower. If they're going to be 3% owned, then he'd play a bunch of them. But yeah, Brian Seymour, I'm looking at that also. The minor Tigers game, yeah. As of now, I think that's a high variance spot. You could always look by who projects well as a pitcher as well as the hitters. Like the Yankees against Logan Allen. I don't think Logan projects that well. Let's take a look. So let's take a look at the pitchers. Point per dollar. So like Alex Wood against Miami. Does Miami project well? In the back, let's take a look at point per dollar. Miami. No, not really. Not really. And let's take a look at Cease against Texas. Inoa against Arizona. Arizona and Texas today. Probably not. Arizona, no, not at all. Texas, barely. So that doesn't seem like that much of a spot. J.A. Happ against Pittsburgh, and then Minor against Detroit. So let's take a look at Pittsburgh and Detroit. Pittsburgh, okay, not that great. Detroit definitely comes up. So yeah. So Minor projects decently. Decently enough for 6,900 on DraftKings. And the Tigers project pretty well. So yeah, that's a higher variance spot. No, I would agree with you. Are people going to play Mike Minor against the Tigers? Maybe. On DraftKings, like on FanDuel, it's going to be no one's going to be playing a cheap pitcher like that. Right. On FanDuel, we take a look even point per dollar wise. Well, Mike Minor's really cheap on FanDuel. I see most people just paying up for DeGrom. Because you can. The batting pricing is soft enough. He's projected for 50 points median on FanDuel. I mean, look at the discrepancy. He projects for 15 points more than any other pitcher. On the bat, based on the bat. So yeah. So he's going to be the chalk. Does that mean you stack the Nationals against him? No. But doesn't mean you have to play him. It's a 14-game slate. Frederick Duke says, can you discuss the correlation between the number of likes you receive and how cold your apple juice stays? I don't know how many thumbs up I got, but it's getting kind of warm. So hit that thumbs up button on your way out. Thummy thumb, thummy thumb, thummy thumb. Hit the subscribe button if you're new here. Hit the notification bell to know when we go live. We got Grinders live. We got NBA. We got MLB. Coming up later on the channel. I'm always in the Discord. For premium members. RotoGrinders.com/premium. Click on the link in the description to let you know to get $10 off your first month at RotoGrinders and 14-game slate. Anything could happen, right? Anything. It's gonna be two random stuff. Oh, it's gonna be San Francisco and Pittsburgh, and 4-4. You're done. You win. It could be. I like the bigger slates. I don't like these 5-game slates where, like, I need to really find a way to get different. Like here, you almost play whoever you want. You can almost play whoever you want. So we'll discuss more on Monday, as usual. Mondays, James McCool comes in, and we talk some strategy, more strategy-ish, whatever. Maybe we talk more about the simulations. You can ask James some stuff. James actually runs those types of things. I don't. I use other people's stuff, right? I can run my own little basic stuff, but not like the complex stuff. I don't know if you need it. I'm not sure if you need it. It's better, but I just don't know if you need it. So you can ask those questions then. But until next time, I've been Jordan Cooper on a casual Friday. Casually hit the thumbs up button on your way out the door. And this has been another edition of the DFS pregame show on RotoGrinders.com.